Hey guys, long time no see. I am Carp and I am standing at the Guishan Han Tomb in Xuzhou, China. Unlike the grand imperial mausoleums of later dynasties, this tomb was carved deep into the mountain for a king of Chu during the Han Dynasty. Here he attempted to recreate his palace and even his entire life in an underground world built for eternity. It is an astonishing feat of ancient engineering, so let's step inside and uncover its secrets. The Western Han Dynasty ruled much of China proper from 202 BC to AD 9. It was the second imperial dynasty in Chinese history, and the Liu family certainly knew how to keep power in the family. Over the course of the dynasty, more than 100 kings ruled under the authority of the imperial house. Most of them were also named Liu because apparently, when the Liu family said family business, they meant the entire empire. The kingdom of Chu was centered in what is now Xuzhou, Jiangsu province, and its kings were members of the same imperial clan. Roman Republican architecture often celebrated public life, civic institutions, and the idea of the Commonwealth. Western Han architecture, by contrast, was usually much more interested in displaying the authority, wealth, and prestige of the Liu royal family. And this tomb is a perfect example. Even underground, the kings of Chu were determined to remind everyone who was in charge. The owner of this tomb was Liu Zhu, the sixth king of Chu during the Western Han Dynasty. Judging by the number of visitors here today, he must be delighted that people from all over the world are still coming to visit him more than 2,000 years after his death. But why has his tomb attracted so much attention? To answer that question, let us first look at how it was built. During the Western Han period, royal tombs were often carved directly into mountains, creating enormous underground palaces. Here in Xuzhou, workers spent an estimated 13 years cutting chambers, corridors, and ceremonial halls deep into the rock for Liu Zhu. In other words, this was not simply a tomb, it was a royal residence with no windows, very thick walls, and an exceptionally long lease. The underground palace is divided into two sections, one for Liu Zhu and the other for his wife, the queen. Unfortunately, historical records often paid far less attention to royal women than to kings. As a result, we do not even know her personal name today. The tomb therefore has two long entrance corridors, one leading to the king's burial chambers and the other to the queen's. Each corridor stretches about 56 meters into the mountain and is approximately 1.78 meters high. So if you are tall, watch your head. The ancient builders clearly did not design this place for basketball players. The king and queen recreated almost every aspect of their daily lives inside this underground palace, including a stable and a house watering trough. During the Western Han Dynasty, a vassal king such as Liu Zhu was entitled to ride in a carriage drawn by 4 horses, while the emperor could use 6. This was not simply a matter of transportation, it was a matter of political status. In the Han Dynasty, even house power was determined by social rank. The chambers of this underground palace are supported by massive stone pillars. To modern visitors, the entire tomb may look like a world made entirely of bare rock, but this was not how it originally appeared. When the tomb was completed, many of its chambers were fitted with wooden architecture structures and decorations, making the underground palace resemble a real royal residence. Over the following 2,000 years, however, the wood gradually decayed, leaving only the stone chambers we see today. In other words, what survives is the skeleton of the palace. Most of its original interior has disappeared. I visited this tomb during the first week of July, just as the Chinese students were beginning their summer vacation. As a result, the underground palace was extremely crowded. Perhaps Liu Zhu, the tomb's long-dead owner, would have enjoyed the atmosphere. After all, he included spaces for music and dancing in his tomb so that he could continue listening to performances and holding banquets in the afterlife. The underground palace also contained a kitchen, a well for drawing water, an armory for storing weapons, and even a toilet. Apparently, Liu Zhu wanted to be fully prepared for internal life, food, water, entertainment, security, and of course, somewhere private to sit and think. Liu Zhu's burial chambers lie along the central axis of the underground palace. His reconstructed coffin is now displayed in the eastern burial chamber and is decorated with cloud motifs inspired by Western Han artistic traditions. However, this is not Liu Zhu's original coffin. When archaeologists and heritage workers entered the western burial chamber, where Liu Zhu had originally been buried, they found only fragments of the wooden coffin. His remains had already disappeared. A reconstructed coffin was therefore created for display and placed in the eastern burial chamber. The western chamber has a large crack in its stone ceiling, making it less suitable and potentially less safe for visitors. So the coffin we see today is an imagined reconstruction, while the king himself and his original burial furnishings have long since vanished. After the reconstructed coffin was placed here, something rather strange appeared. Behind the coffin in the corner of the stone wall, there is a dark mark that looks surprisingly like the shadow of a man. According to local legend, it is the shadow of Liu Zhu himself, still standing in his underground palace and welcoming visitors from around the world. The real explanation, however, is probably less supernatural. Xuzhou has a humid climate, and moisture sweeping through the mountain gradually formed this human-shaped stain on the wall. But perhaps Liu Zhu would prefer the legendary version. After more than 2,000 years, the King of Chu is still here to greet his guests. In the southern section of the underground palace are the Queen's dancing hall and burial chambers. Compared with the King's chambers, hers are noticeably smaller, reflecting the difference in status between the King and the Queen. Her coffin is also a modern reconstruction rather than the original. Neither her original coffin nor any identifiable human remains have survived. Well, that brings us to the end of the story of the Guishan Han Tomb. But before we leave, here is one final Easter egg. In Chinese, Guishan literally means Turtle Mountain, and when viewed from the air, the mountain really does resemble a giant turtle. Perhaps that is why Liu Zhu chose this place for his underground palace. Even after 2,000 years, the turtle is still guarding the King of Chu. For more stories about history, archaeology, and ancient China, please subscribe to the channel. I'm Carl. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next adventure.